Once upon a time, the whole world danced, but it danced at its own pace. A trend was a slow tide, something that might start on a street corner in Tokyo or a club in London, and then, months or even years later, wash up on distant shores. It traveled by word of mouth, through magazines passed from hand to hand. On television shows you had to wait a week to see. Culture had an itinerary. It had to clear customs. It was a tangible thing, something you could hold. But as a new decade dawned, the very fabric of our shared experience was about to be digitized, compressed, and fired across the globe at the speed of light. The stage was being set for a cultural revolution, and the price of admission was simply an internet connection. The world was about to get a whole lot smaller and a whole lot louder. It began in 6-second loops, and suddenly, everyone wanted to go viral. That word, viral, once a term of biology, became a term of sociology. It was the dream of instantaneous, exponential fame. To create something in your bedroom in Ohio and have it watched by millions in Mumbai by morning. This wasn't the slow burn fame of old Hollywood. This was a flash fire. And the kindling was a new generation of social media platforms that were less like photo albums and more like global talent shows, running 24 hours a day. In the early 2010s, social media became our stage. But it was more than a stage. It was our town square, our shopping mall, our diary, and our billboard, all rolled into one glowing rectangle that we carried in our pockets. The lines that had once separated our public and private lives, our social interactions and our consumer habits, began to dissolve. What you did, what you liked, what you wore, where you ate, it all became content, curated for an audience of friends, strangers, and, most importantly, the algorithms that were quietly watching from behind the curtain. We were all building our own personal brands, whether we knew it or not. Vine, with its 6.5-second limit, was a masterclass in creative constraint. It turned everyday people into comedic geniuses, forcing them to distill a joke down to its absolute essence. It was a new language of jump cuts and punchlines, creating a generation of stars who could build a career in the time it takes to tie your shoes. Vine was a fleeting, brilliant flash, a testament to the idea that anyone with a phone and a clever idea could become an overnight sensation. Its eventual shutdown was, in itself, a perfect metaphor for the decade, a beloved trend that burned brightly and then vanished, leaving behind only the memories and the RIP Vine compilations. Twitter, with its 140-character limit, became the world's central nervous system. It was where news broke, where revolutions were organized, and where a single, perfectly crafted sentence could become a global headline. It turned pundits and comedians into household names and gave a direct line of communication from the most powerful people in the world to, well, everyone. Brands quickly realized the power of this new town square, creating witty, relatable personas to sell us everything from fast food to airline tickets. Twitter turned our collective consciousness into a real-time feed and our opinions into overnight sensations. And then there was Instagram. It started so innocently, a simple way to make your blurry phone pictures look like nostalgic Polaroids. But it quickly evolved into something else entirely. The grid became a canvas for the perfect life, meticulously curated and beautifully lit. It wasn't long before this aspirational landscape became a marketplace. The influencer was born, a new kind of celebrity who felt more like a friend, recommending products with a sincerity that traditional advertising could only dream of. Sponsored posts, affiliate links, and brand collaborations turned personal style into a business model. Instagram didn't just turn people into overnight sensations, it turned lifestyles into commodities. With these platforms as the engine, trends didn't just spread, they exploded across the internet. The velocity was staggering. A video could be uploaded in the morning and become a global phenomenon by evening, its associated hashtag a beacon drawing millions into a shared temporary universe. The mechanics were simple: a low barrier to entry, a clear call to action, and the irresistible allure of being part of something bigger than yourself. We saw it with the bizarre, rigid stillness of planking, a trend that had us lying face down in the most ridiculous places imaginable. We saw it with the chaotic, convulsive energy of the Harlem Shake, where a single masked dancer would suddenly trigger an explosion of flailing bodies. These weren't just trends, they were invitations to play a global game of make-believe. For a moment, the internet wasn't a place of division, but a playground. Perhaps the peak of this collaborative art was the mannequin challenge. Entire stadiums, concert halls and classrooms would freeze in place, creating living dioramas captured by a single, weaving camera. It was a moment of collective focus, a quiet pause in a decade of noise, proving that we could create something beautiful and surreal together, with no other incentive than the act of creation itself. In those moments, it felt like we were all in on the same inside joke, a joke shared by billions. There was a profound, if fleeting, sense of unity. It didn't matter where you were or who you were. If you'd seen the video, if you'd tried the challenge, you were part of the club. It was a golden age of digital connection, a brief period where the promise of a truly global village felt real. But the village was built on a platform, and the platform's architecture was changing. The chronological feed, a simple reflection of time, was replaced by the algorithm, a complex engine of engagement. The goal was no longer to show you what was new, it was to show you what would keep you looking. And so, as the feeds got faster, the trends got shorter. The lifespan of a cultural moment began to shrink, from months to weeks, then to days, and sometimes just hours. The saturation was total. Something could be everywhere one week: a meme, a dance, a brightly colored drink, a spinning piece of plastic, an inescapable part of the digital atmosphere. These weren't just cultural artifacts, they were social currency. Owning the viral product, using the viral slang, was proof that you were present, that you were part of the now. Scarcity was manufactured to create hype, turning limited edition sneakers and makeup palettes into objects of mass desire. And cringe the next. The speed of the cycle created a new kind of social anxiety, the fear of being late to the party. Using a meme a day too late marked you as out of touch. The inside joke had become a test, and everyone was being graded in real time. The joy of participation was slowly being replaced by the pressure to keep up. Behind it all, the algorithms kept us chasing the next big thing. They learned our desires, our insecurities, our triggers. Every like, every share, every pause in our scrolling was a breadcrumb, feeding an invisible system designed not just to respond to our demand, but to create it. We weren't just being shown ads. Our very choices were being shaped, nudged, and saturated by a force we couldn't see, all in the name of maximizing engagement. In this new economy, memes became cultural currency. Dances became cultural currency. They were a shorthand, a shared language that could transcend borders and backgrounds. They were how we processed politics, celebrated victories, and mourned losses. They were the lifeblood of the new social internet, a constant stream of remixable, shareable content. We weren't just watching trends, we were making them. The line between creator and consumer had been erased. We were remixing them, adding our own verses to the global song. And we were moving on just as quickly, caught in the relentless current of the feed, always looking for the next wave. But as the trends multiplied, so did the fatigue. The constant churn led to burnout, a sense of digital exhaustion. In response, counter-movements began to bubble up. Minimalism and decluttering, championed by figures like Marie Kondo, urged us to ask if our possessions sparked joy. People began to talk about digital detoxes, stepping away from the chaos to find a moment of quiet. Yet, in a final, perfect irony of the decade, even these movements were monetized, packaged, and sold back to us on the very platforms we were trying to escape. The 2010s taught us one thing above all: saturation was no longer a byproduct of the system, it was the system itself. Online, fame is a flash, a brilliant and temporary burst of light. But the memories? The feeling of laughing with friends while failing to plank, of nailing a dance you practiced for hours, of feeling connected to millions of strangers through a single silly joke. Those stick around. They are the artifacts of a strange, chaotic, and transformative decade where we learned to live our lives online, for better and for worse. Upcoming in the next episode, discover the 2020s. In this modern-day era, the pace only accelerated. Ultra-fast fashion, same-day delivery, and viral micro-trends made consumerism faster, louder, and more disposable than ever. This is the era of ultra-fast everything.